Can I get you to Sys 2401 Alpha, Roger?
Hi, my name's Holly Barkwell. I'm the President and CEO of BH Group. I'm also the NENA Canadian Region Director. Today we're here to talk about the challenges and opportunities related to Next Generation 911 and the transition for PSAPs and the carriers. And today we have with us Erich Baumgartner of Rogers. He is the Senior Manager of CLEC Affairs. Thank you, Erich, for taking the time to speak to us today.
Thank you for having me, Holly.
So with all of the information and misinformation that vendors are repeating, or other people are talking about misconceptions, etc., what does the term Next Generation 911 mean to you?
So from my perspective, Next Generation is really trying to almost get an alignment of customer and I guess Canadians' expectations with regards to the type of services that they use, so that they can use it everywhere and anywhere. We have all these great services and forms of communication that you can talk to with each other. Now the next step is trying to get all those types of technologies to work for 911, so that we can use more methods of communication other than just voice calls. There are always scenarios that happen in the world that kind of highlight opportunities where maybe non-traditional voice communication could be somewhat of a great benefit in certain situations. So customers always have the expectation that things do work the same way they work when they talk to one another, but there are some challenges with 911 and getting that up to speed. So this is really, I feel, a great alignment that we're doing to get everything up to the customer expectation level, and it's an exciting time because it's one of the biggest changes in probably since 911 was first incepted in about 50 years ago this year.
Okay. Considering this is the 50th anniversary, that's a great comment. So what would you say is the biggest challenge that you and your clients face regarding the transition to the Next Generation platform?
I think the biggest challenge is awareness and readiness. There's a lot of changes that are going to be introduced with Next Gen 911. I'm also the TIF owner for Originating Networks at the Emergency Services Working Group level. And through that, we've been working for a couple of years, just going through standards, technical, and operational considerations, looking at the NENA i3 spec and how we can leverage that. One of the big challenges is always getting people involved because that it's such a big task. It can be a little bit daunting when looking at it and seeing just the volumes of things that need to be taken care of. So the biggest challenge, I think, is trying to get people involved as quickly as possible and as early as we can in the process, because it will take a little bit of time to go through all the material and everything that we have to do here in Canada, and try to set aside standards or define standards or review them to make sure that there's no Canadian variation that we need to look at for implementing anything here in Canada. So I think that's one of the biggest things, is just to get people involved as quickly as possible. There's a lot of great resources and some great groups discussing items like the Emergency Services Working Group does. So it's really getting involved as soon as you can. Getting in at the 11th hour will be a little bit of a challenge because there'll be a lot of information at that time to look at. The sooner you can get in, the better.
Okay. And what would be the most important piece of advice that you would offer agencies or PSAPs with regards to the transition?
So for the transition, there's a lot of coordination that's going to be happening. And at this time in Canada, we are looking at certain trials and seeing that we can onboard PSAPs and a bunch of other carriers and network providers as well, just to implement and make sure that NG911 works. Of course, in getting involved, that has to happen fairly soon. As I just mentioned, there's a lot of details and information to look at, and there could also be a lot of vendors that may need to be engaged for certain types of CAD software or applications at the PSAP level for some of the changes that are going to happen in NG911. a lot of information or additional data is going to be made available. So as we look at that at the industry level, we need some PSAP participation there to see how are they going to obtain this information from originating carriers, how will they use that, and develop processes and procedures around that. Some of these things that we are tackling with NG911 are brand new, a lot of new things. So there's definitely a very big scope to look at, so that we can properly implement and get everybody on board for NG911. Ideally, we'd like everybody to get on board and have some consistency across Canada. Whenever possible, to not leverage gateways. Of course, they do provide limitations, and when we do launch NG911, we want to make use of all those great bells and whistles that NG911 will bring forward with it.
Excellent. So I'm going to throw another question at you with regards to the CRTC's deadline of IP voice trials beginning in no later than 2019, February of 2019. Is Rogers on track to meet that deadline? Or do you think the industry in general is going to be ready to meet that deadline?
I think the industry will be ready for the trials. Having everybody on there, not too sure. There are some participants that have raised their hand, such as Rogers, and we are going to be testing some of our wireless services with the launch. We are trying to mitigate any kind of potential issue wherever possible. We are trying to set up even pre-lab testing activities so that when we do get into those trial phases, we do have some sort of comfort level that certain functional elements, we'll say, have been tested or work, and hopes to try to just get a little bit more of an advance in time. Whenever possible, we're trying to do that or pre-certify, just so that when we get into the testing and trial phases, that we can hopefully push through as quick as possible without issue. And so that we can complete all the necessary steps so that we can implement by the CRTC deadline for 2020. So
just as a TIF owner, if I can ask one more question, because I can't remember myself, if a PSAP is interested in becoming a trial participant, what do they need to do to register? Who should they contact for that?
So if you're already part of the Emergency Services Working Group, the task TIF 88 has been open for trials. They can be, at any time, you can go on the CRTC website and search ESWG and TIFs, and you can see the full list of task names. And on any of the NG911 tasks that you see there, on the very first page of the document is listed the TIF owner. Usually, so engaging the TIF owner on the front page is always the best way to go. As an alternative, the chair of the Emergency Services Working Group can also be engaged, and he can also direct you to the chairs of the respective TIFs for any that you would have interested in joining. There are quite a few TIFs right now for NG911 going on. Trials is definitely one of the bigger ones, as well as the ongoing TIF 81, 82, 83, which is really looking at the three core network components. First being the originating networks, the second being the NG911 networks, and the third being on the PSAP end.
Perfect. Okay, thank you. And in closing, is there any other message or any other comments you'd like to make regarding the transition process?
Regarding the transition, I think it's going to be a very fun and exciting time. There's a lot of high hopes, and I think we're going to do a very good job at it here in Canada. We do have some great participation and some great coordination, and the experts that we do have here within Canada are doing a very good job to make us approach the trial date that we have in 2019. Through working with them, I have great confidence that we're going to set aside some good test plans, test cases. We'll go through, vet that, and make sure that that everything works with the trials. And of course, anybody wanting to get into the trials, again, as I mentioned earlier, the sooner the better. There could be a lot of applications or system development, things like that, that could be required depending on what type of agency you are and what role you're playing. So to have as much advanced time to look at things like that, the better. So yeah, we're on board, looking for the trials to start in February 2019. Very much looking forward to that, and right after that, the implementation of NG 911 here in Canada.
Okay. Thank you very much for your time, Eric. It was a pleasure speaking to you.
Thank you very much, Holly. Take care.